Rohini Sivamani has been serving the community from 2016 as an individual and also in collaboration with multiple agencies. She's a strong domestic violence victims advocate and special education advocate. Rohini has helped several immigrant, especially Indian, South Indian families with special needs children to understand needs of the child, the availability of local resources. With her dental surgery, healthcare background, she has a knack explaining the healthcare and special needs condition to the institution and the parents. Rogini also did a commendable work in COVID relief activities, acting as collaboration between several US-based organizations and healthcare workers in rural Tamil Nadu. Please, Rogini.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, Tanay America, and thank you, attorneys, for your valuable time during the weekend. And since we are running out of time, let me directly go into the discussion. And let me start my question with Lavanya. So, when you and your organization support the people in emergency situations, what is that something you would like us to know even before we encounter an emergency? What is the first aid kit we have to be prepared with?
Yeah, definitely. Being in the land of rules, we have the options like as Shannon explained on will and trust. Just first, I request everyone who is watching, even you are in an immigrant visa, go for will and trust first. That is the most important thing here. That's the most, and whenever you are encountering being a situation, I think it's from you always. When there is an issue within family for domestic victim violence, the first one is they're afraid the children is being taken away. Don't hesitate, to talk about your situation or to discuss about your situation to the right people at the right forum. Ask somewhere. We have lots of options Facebook, social media, everywhere. Being post anonymously, take the suggestions from people. Instead, someone or some third person complaining about the issues inside family, you better be proactive since you are the victim of domestic violence. That is the second one. And the third one is please focus on your health checkup, early health checkup. It is mandatory here because there are cases where people have some, the body has already intimated them, you are not feeling well, but they didn't take it seriously. And they ended up, cardiac arrest or heart attack during the sleep time itself. So don't hesitate to rush to hospitals. Your health is more important than anything. That is the third thing. And the death due to negligence. So whenever there is a warning signs everywhere, for example, a person with the professional swim certification, when he went for a tour, there is a quagmire warning sign, but he thought he is a very professional swimmer and he entered there and he lost his life. And at the end, his family suffered a lot. And there are cases every year that is being reported during New Year or every time, the people drives with sleep. They will drive the whole time and they end up in accident. And there are cases where students, they are very much excited here, being here, and they will see people in water. They were playing like anything, they are professionally trained, but these people also take a similar risk and they lost lives. So death due to negligence that can be avoided always. The other thing I would like to highlight here is everywhere there is one more, you are here, and any country if you go, know the local laws, definitely for sure. Because there is a case a person ended up for the first time in US for work reason, and he was staying in a hotel, and his family, he is blessed with a 6-year-old child and a boy child back in India. And he went to the swimming pool and he saw a child was alone, a 6 years boy child was alone. And he was, since no one was the child also started playing to him, and he started taking care of the child in the pool. And the child was coming to again and again to him. And one time he said, sit on my lap, like that. and all of a sudden he don't know what has happened. Every the family came for a minute, and within an hour the police came and arrested him, saying that there is a child abuse. So know the local laws. Yes, you are excited, definitely, but know the local laws. And police understood, and police was helpful to him, and he used his presence of mind, and he reached the right point of context, like he reached the government bodies. So whenever you are coming, traveling, or any other country, have some emergency contacts, know the right protocols. So these are the main things. And there are also, like, for women, we are celebrating Women's Day, and we are, and Rohini, you know very well, there are women's, who is ending up behind bars, as Nila said, for the child custody cases, know what you talk. Or I think there is a rights named Miranda rights. You have all the rights to invoke Miranda rights when you are investigated. Maybe attorneys, I'm not an attorney, maybe attorney can answer for that. Maybe you have all the rights to invoke the Miranda rights, and you can seek an attorney's advice. So when a CPS is interrogating you and asking you, like, sometimes Indian parents will always, keep the child. We may sleep with the child or something, like, when she's being interrogated, like, did you sleep with your child? The mom said yes, and it turned against her. Actually, it is like she slept next to the child. That's right? So always know, whenever you are interrogated, know what you talk, or invoke your Miranda rights and seek attorney's advice. So these are the main points I want to register today, based on the cases worked upon. And I should really thank Shannon and Nila's time. And being a 3+ year old mom, I think I have to reach Nila for many other things also. And together we can make a difference. And thanks for the opportunity to Tinay as well as Fetna.
Thank you, Lavanya. I have another question. I think that it's more directed to Attorney Shannon's expertise. So when you speak about creating a will and trust to protect a child, is there something similar? Say I don't have a children, but in my elderly days, is there a way I can protect myself?
Yes, Rohini, absolutely. That we work with, really everybody should have these kinds of documents in place. But a lot of times older people might think more about it, but also a lot of times people don't realize, even when you're younger, especially if you have young kids, that it's important also.
Okay. And also when coming to the guardianship, say I can rely on my mother to take care of the child, but at the same time, I'm not sure if she will be able to go online and pay the bills. So can I separate the guardianship into different levels? Say physical custody to somebody, financial responsibilities to another person, and healthcare decisions to my uncle who is a neurologist. Is that possible?
Absolutely. All of these roles are specific roles, and you can name whoever you want for any of them. You just want to think about how they work together. So you want to make sure that the guardian will get along with who is the trustee, who's managing the money. You don't want to have people who maybe are going to be fighting about it.
So in other words, I have to pick my team, a well-coordinated team who moves in the same tune.
Exactly.
Okay, another question. So you have answered all my questions in your presentation, but there are little tiny details, so it can be easy for us to understand. When I'm appointing, say, my close family members as permanent guardians, and say they come to states, will their citizenship matter in the court? Can the court say, you are an Indian citizen, so you cannot take a US citizen home?
No, that in and of itself shouldn't preclude you from being appointed as the guardian. What they're more likely to look at is the citizenship of the child. So it's better if the child has Indian citizenship, because they want to make sure that the child would have all of the rights of a citizen in the country that they're going to. And then they'll look to the country, we call it the destination country. So they'll look at India and see if it's a wide range. Like the judge, unfortunately, has a lot of discretion in terms of deciding what is in the best interest of the child. And so the judge will look at what country it is and take that into consideration and whether it's in the interest of the child to go to that country. Generally, they're going to have a lot of weight to the parent's biological, the child's biological family. But we'll take an extreme case, like if it was like North Korea or something like that, or a country that's like, I don't even, maybe in like Ukraine or something, that where there's like a war going on, a judge might be reluctant to make that appointment.
Okay, so in short, unless there is a war or an unsettling issue happening in the destination country, just because that country's money value is less than US dollar, it doesn't mean that the child cannot go there, right?
It doesn't mean that they can't, for sure, but it is like, so I was saying like a war-torn country might be like an extreme example, or like they'll look to, are human rights respected in that country? So that will go into the whole calculation or the whole analysis of what is in the best interest of the child. So you could think of like Canada would be like the most like the US in terms of like, okay, like it's kind of a no-brainer that there's not going to be an issue if they go to Canada. Then going to maybe Syria is going to be on the other end of the spectrum. But then there's like a whole lot in between that unfortunately is kind of in the discretion of the judge. But generally they do try to keep families together. So for what it's worth.
Okay, so now that we have already survived a pandemic, we are not even sure if it come back. So is there a particular time the child will stay within the CPS and enter into the adoption pool, something like that? Say a family is in India and then they take a month to come because the US visa was not immediately available, the flight service is not available. Just because the family got delayed due to external conditions and a month, can the child be thrown into the adoption list and a stranger can adopt a child?
I think that would be really unusual. And this is where you want to make sure that your wishes are documented. So if you have a will saying this is what you want, then it's clearer for the court to know that this is going to be temporary and there's somebody coming. And we both know that there's a case maybe going on right now where this is an issue. And I mean, I'm not that familiar with how that would work. And maybe Nila could speak to that actually in terms of like how long someone would have to be in the foster care, a child would have to be in the foster care system to be eligible for adoption. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that, Nila.
Yeah, so it can depend on jurisdiction. There are jurisdictions where that move very quickly towards what needs to happen for a child to be adopted is first, any legal parents, their parental rights need to be terminated first, and that's one proceeding, and then the adoption is a separate proceeding. Again, some jurisdictions will move towards the termination of parental rights and adoption within 6 months. In New York, it's much longer than that. There's a federal law called ASFA, ASFA, that states that in order to get certain federal funding, the state needs to move to terminate a parent's rights within essentially 15 months if a child's been in the foster system for 15. The real language is 15 out of the last 22 months. That doesn't make, it's a bit of a weird legal concept, but it's, so that 15-month mark is often where there'll be this question of should parents' rights be terminated and the child adopted. But unfortunately, yes, it can go quite quickly. And that's why it's so important to, as Shannon is named, have these things laid out, but also to know, to get the advice of legal counsel very quickly, especially in the case of this idea of like a shadow foster system or hidden foster system, if CPS is getting involved and there's no judicial oversight, it can feel very disempowering. It can be very unclear as to how to navigate that.
So another question, I can write whatever I want, and then after I pass away, does my son have a say in the court? At what age can he express his willingness, which may align with my idea, which I have written in the will, or a totally different ideas? When does a child has a say in the court?
So when they're, I think it's, and Nell, you might know this better, is I think it's 14 in New York, as to the court can, or the child has the right to have some kind of input into where they go. And then in terms of like, if they have a sibling who can take care of them, that as long as the sibling is 18, then that should be fine.
Okay, I have a quick question. I guess that's the last from my side. Say the assets are frozen for the child until he's 18, and the family whoever takes care of him, whether the biological or the foster care family or a prospective adoption families, can they take a small amount from that estate just to face a unexpected medical expense or an educational purpose? Are they allowed to draw part of the fund?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It really depends on the court where that's overseeing the money, and some courts are more liberal and some are stricter. So some may require for every single use of the money that they have to petition, and they may be very strict with it, and others they may be more lenient.
Okay, just one more. I write a will, and then say somebody writes a will and they pass away, and the person with the temporary custody, all of a sudden he or she goes nuts, and then they do extremely a 360-degree turn and do something which they have do something other than that which they have promised to us. Can I still build an extra layer of protection, writing a letter to CPS, writing a letter to the juvenile court judge, and just in case even to the Supreme Court judge if it goes to the Supreme Court? Am I allowed to do that?
I mean, you could write however many letters you want. There's no restriction on that. But in terms of, you really want to pick somebody who you trust, and also just having that documentation. And I think this, the court case where this is an issue is they didn't have any documentation of who they wanted to be taking care of the child. And so that's really where you're a lot more vulnerable. So if you have it laid out that, okay, this person was only temporary, like that was always the intention, then there's a lot less chance that that person can go and put the child up for adoption or something crazy like that.
So he or she, when they have a temporary custody or a shelter, they cannot give away my child. Am I right? Or even consider the options of adoption. Are they allowed to do that? Is it legal?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. These rules are different in each state, but I mean, to me, it's shocking that would be, especially, like I said, if it's documented that this is who you want to have as the guardian, that there's already somebody who's lined up, and it's just that's just in the court, that's like in the pipeline, that the child just wouldn't really be eligible, I don't think, for adoption in that case.
Okay. And then I have a question for Neela. So, and even for Shannon, is the judge and the system do they receive cultural and diversity training? Do they understand what it means? What does family mean in Indian system? Do like the police receiving cultural and diversity training, like the teachers receiving cultural diversity training? Do attorneys, the CPS professionals, the judges, do they receive such kind of training?
It depends on the jurisdiction. In a place like New York City and New York State, there are lots of trainings, there's lots of efforts to have training in place. But I guess I have a somewhat pessimistic lens on this, but the reality is that because it's such a subjective system and there's such broad definitions and of neglect or maltreatment in the law, and there's so much discretion, as Shannon said, if you're looking at a best interest determination, what does that actually look like? And it's all dictated by our personal experience, as much as we might try not to, it's dictated by our personal experiences, our opinions, and judges and CPS workers are making those big and small assessments and judgments all the time. So there's definitely efforts. I don't want to minimize it, but there are definitely efforts to be better trained and more culturally responsive. But I see very much on a regular basis the ways that it's still insufficient.
Okay, and now that I have you here, another question: can I report to CPS anonymously?
It depends on your state law. So in New York State, you can report anonymously. In some states, you can't. I will say, as an advocate for parents, we're advocating to change our system from an anonymous system to a confidential system. The issue with anonymous reporting is even CPS doesn't know who made the call. So they can't go and speak to that person. And it also allows for a lot of harassment in the reporting process. So, neighbor, a family member, someone who you have a disagreement with can then use that system to make reports against you and start that investigation process. So, but yeah, in New York currently there is anonymous reporting if you're not a mandated reporter. If you're a mandated reporter and you're reporting in your professional capacity, you have to provide your information.
Okay, and nowadays we hear the children are becoming so smart, and even children threaten the parents saying that I'm going to call CPS or call 911 against you. So does CPS know the difference between the fake reporting and the actual reporting?
It's a good question. Sometimes yes, but oftentimes no. There's a real fear in the system that something bad will happen to a child if every allegation isn't taken very seriously and investigated thoroughly. There are these horror stories, unfortunately, and they get a lot of publicity, understandably, and no one wants anything bad to happen to a child. But because of that fear, in my experience, especially what a child says is taken very seriously. Yeah, for better or for worse.
Parenting these days are very different. And I have a question from audience. In the trust or will, after listing all the properties at the time of writing a will, can we have a catch-all statement that transfers ownership to any future properties to someone? Like say, I add a property or I remove a property. Should I modify the will every time?
Sure. So that's a great question. So in a will, it covers everything. It's like a catch-all. So if you buy new properties, it's just going to automatically, like your will says, I leave everything my own. And this is where the trust requires a little bit more vigilance, because the trust only works for assets that are either owned by the trust or are left to the trust through a beneficiary designation. And so you just kind of like, if you buy a new property, you want to do it in the name of the trust. If you open a new account, you want to do it in the name of the trust. So that's where the trust, to avoid probate, it does require a little bit more administrative effort than the will, but even if it doesn't go into the trust, and we always do a will as well, just because of that reason, that in case there's something that didn't get put into the trust, the will just says, I leave everything to my trust. So you don't have to be, sort of depending on what your plan is, you kind of can, whether it needs to be like continually updated, but you don't need to update the documents. Like those documents don't need to list everything. It's just that the titling has to be appropriate.
Okay, now that you mentioned about updating the documents, 18 years is such a long time. I may list someone as the guardian, and then the relationships don't stay the same over the time, and the properties and everything. So how often do you recommend us to revisit the will and trust and modify accordingly? Like, should I, like housekeeping, like spring cleaning, should I do it every year? Is there any suggestion from your side?
You should just always, I mean, with some of our clients, we have like an annual review. We just meet with them and just kind of go over, do you have any new assets? You know, is everybody still in the same place? All of that. But you just want to keep a lookout of, does anything change in your life, really? Did somebody pass away? Did somebody get sick? And so now they're not maybe a good person to, you know, they wouldn't be able to take care of your child. So you maybe just want to think about it once a year, maybe just have a list of those people and just pull it out and look at it and see, is there anything that needs to be changed? But it doesn't have to be a big process.
Okay, thank you so much.